everyone to this volunteer-led team training on getting your elected officials to act. My name is Marnie Walsh, and I'm the Empowerment Coordinator with American Promise. It's exciting to be with you. I want to let you know that this training is being recorded. So we're going to use the sign-in sheet that I'm going to put in the chat right now. And it's just a simple sign-in form where we can collect your name, phone number, all that fun stuff, email. And I just put that in the chat right now. Can everyone access that okay? Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so the purpose of getting elected officials to act team is to provide a training for you to be more effective and confident in motivating your elected official to take action to advance the passage of the amendment. This could be focused on motivating action by an elected congressperson working to pass the amendment resolution through Congress, which is the first part of the amendment process to win the 28th Amendment, or focused on an elected state official to act through a state or local level resolution, or later to ratify the amendment once it is passed through Congress. Tonight's call is going to be part of a series of 5 trainings and advocacy teams that meet each month. We'll review the other teams, and the sign-up form for them will be put in the chat at the end of tonight's session. Marie Henselder-Kimmel, American Promise New Jersey chapter leader, and Vicki Barnes, American Promise Minnesota chapter leader, are the volunteer leaders of this Getting Elected Officials to Act team, which meets on the second Thursday of the month at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Marie and Vicki, take it away.
Thanks, Marnie. We're fortunate to also have our mentor, Sam Harris, with us tonight. Thanks for being with us, Sam. So here's what's going to happen tonight. We'll start with some inspiration. We'll ask for people to share updates following our asks from our lobby day meetings in May and share any progress on the goals we set for ourselves since the May meeting. Then we'll review the champion scale that Sam Daly Harris developed as a measuring stick of our elected officials' level of support from opposed to champion. Last month, we discussed meeting with legislators who were neutral. We also covered the basics of identifying an issue that on which the neutral elected has taken leadership steps in order to write a letter to the editor in a positive light with a call for leadership on our amendment resolution as well. We'll put that meeting link in the chat so you can see that the tactics we went over. It's the YouTube video. And tonight we'll focus on effective tactics that we can use with an elected official who is a supporter. Already indicated they will co-sponsor or has already co-sponsored our amendment, but has not taken other actions. In order to cover those tactics, we'll ask for a volunteer who has recently met with an elected official who is a supporter or their staff. We'll cover what advocacy methods your group has already used and discuss what further tactics can be taken with comments from the group and then from us. We'll have an action strategy for chapters to use in order to help all of us follow up on our May lobby day meetings and move our supporter electeds up the champion scale. And if we have time, we'll do a breakout session to do more brainstorming on what actions we can take and that will take us toward this plan and pair with an accountability buddy. We'll come back together to review the tactics that we've discussed tonight and ask everyone to commit to one action to move their elected official up the champion scale, no matter where they are on the scale, and look forward to hearing about experiences in our next meeting. Just a reminder, please put your name and state in the attendance sheet. The link is being put in the chat again. But first, let's start with a little bit of fun. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given? And I'll start just to break the ice. My mother told me years and years and years ago, never to write down anything that you might want to take back later. So that's kind of stuck with me. And in the time of social media, it'd be nice if everybody thought about that. So let's go next to Joan. Joan, what was the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, it's so basic. Both of my parents were sticklers for honesty and being honest with yourself and with the other people. I mean, it's so basic.
Awesome. That's great. Judy, how about you? What's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given? You want to unmute and share that with us?
I just said, I would say be true to yourself.
That's good. Excellent. How about you, Marnie? Do you want to unmute and share that with us?
Yes. I would probably say, I think would probably be from my grandfather, who was my biggest fan, who would always say, like, you will make a difference. It wasn't necessarily advice, but it was something that, always carries on, and it helps me in my role right now.
Excellent. How about you, Carlton? What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Can you unmute and share that with us?
Yeah, my grandfather taught me as a young boy not to spend too much time listening to what people say, but watch what they do.
Excellent. Good one. Thank you. How about you, Zhang? Would you like to unmute and share with us the best piece of advice you've ever been given? All right, well, maybe we'll later. We'll go on to Sam. Sam, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Well, this wasn't given to me personally, but Buckminster Fuller's quote, "The things to do are the things that need doing, that you see need to be done, and that no one else seems to see needs to be done," has been some really good advice for me, though it wasn't ever given to me personally.
That's pretty good. And how about you, Marie?
And I would have to say the same thing as Sam said. It's not advice that was necessarily given to me, but it was sort of a principle by which it's a golden rule type of a principle that I used in my medical practice, and I would say I try to do now, and that is to treat others and to think about running situations like you would want your family to be treated and like you would like to be treated. I think that's a good principle to run governments by and run your personal life by and
Excellent. Yes. Thank you. All right. And Marie, you have some inspiration for us to share.
This meeting. Oops, sorry.
Yes. So I wanted to talk because we're talking about some of you are new to our meeting, but we talk about how we work with our elected officials, no matter where they are, on support for our amendment resolution, and try to move them to a more positive, more supportive spot. And we've talked about opposed elected officials, and we've talked about neutral elected officials. And today our focus is on supportive elected officials and trying to move them up to the next step, advocate. And we'll define those positions in a minute or so. But many of you have been on American Promise Connect or some of the other team calls have heard me talk about how our group in New Jersey was just able to have an event, a virtual event, where our Congressman Andy Kim, he's not my congressman, but he's the congressman from the district next door that we cover. And he participated in a virtual event with us. It was a panel discussion. It was a discussion with him rather on how Congress should be focused on representing their people, not on the big money donors. And I wanted to talk about that from a little bit of a different point of view. I first met Andy Kim back in 2017, the first year that I was an American Promise volunteer. He was just doing exploratory to run for Congress and then declared and ran for Congress. And I had the opportunity to meet him at a few different rally events and that sort of thing, and spoke to him about, well, what do you think about money in politics and how it affects politics? And went from that point of view to meeting him several other times, eventually having him sign a candidate pledge in 2018 when he was running. And then he was elected and he co-sponsored the amendment resolution in the last Congress. And then he was in his reelection campaign, he signed the pledge again. And this time he has co-sponsored again. But we were not able, even though we lobbied him in DC, we had not been able to get an in-person meeting with him or a direct meeting with him during COVID. So with the lobby day meeting in May, his chief of staff was who we met with, and actually that person, the chief of staff said, well, you know, he's very supportive and he would like to do anything he can help with. So we said, well, would he participate in a public event for us, with us? And she said, yeah, I think he would do that. So then she got back to us and said, yes, he will. And he'll do an in-person meeting with you for 15 minutes because we're doing this virtually immediately before the event. So we kind of got a double whammy. And I wanted to talk about how that felt, because it really, you know, looking back over the last 4 years, it was in practice exactly what we're talking about tonight. Different, you know, how we met with him repeated times, spoke with his staffers, met with his staffers, wrote letters to the editor, followed up with him, then had the meeting with him and had the public event. And he's also at the, because we had this other 15-minute direct meeting, we said, well, we're getting a double bonus tonight, but time to ask for another ask. So we asked for him to collaborate on an op-ed, and we haven't specifically gone back yet to say, well, would you make the collaboration for an op-ed for Constitution Day? But that's what we're going to be doing. So it's just a very empowering to take these steps and push yourself a little bit and say, oh, we're not getting anywhere. What are we going to do? We have to try again, and put yourself out there. And like Sam says, you know, the where you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, that's when the magic happens. When you step outside of your comfort zone, that's when the magic happens. And that's what I think we've done. And that it's felt that way. We really do feel thrilled about our success in being able to move forward. And I think that, you know, I think more of us can do that with using some of these steps that we're going to go over tonight. So that's my little story.
Excellent. Thank you. Does anyone else have any updates about the asks that you made on your lobby day meetings in May, or any other recent contacts with your elected official or their staff? Anybody have any news?
Actually, yeah, I'd like to say a word on this. I didn't take part in Lobby Day because we had just recently, before Lobby Day, we had met with both legislative aides for Lisa Blunt Rochester, our representative from Delaware, and also with a legislative aide from Coons, Senator Coons, Judiciary Committee aide. And the aide from Coons is, we were hoping that Senator Coons might step up and sort of take Senator Udall's place as a primary supporter for a primary, well, sponsor, along with Jean Shaheen. And when we mentioned this to his aide, he said, oh, he would never do that. And I was really disappointed. And he said, it's just way too, it's too much of a Democrat thing. He says it's so Democrat branded. And he really values his position as sort of, you know, a guy that reaches out to all sides. And he said, just like he wouldn't be voting for a purely Republican, you know, maybe right to life amendment effort. Anyway, it just made me realize how much more work we have to do to make this a nonpartisan effort. So I just wanted to share that was discouraging. I mean, we spent an hour talking with him. It was a very fruitful discussion, but what I walked away with was, this is a Democrat branded initiative.
Yep.
Is this Senator Chris Coons in Delaware you're talking about?
Yes, it is.
Mhm.
Yes, that's, so I know that's, but he does support the amendment. He signed it. He co-sponsored. So he will co-sponsor. He just doesn't want to introduce it. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the challenge that we have, which is why, you know, shopping around maybe a more conservatively worded amendment proposal and getting a good solid Republican support before any Democrat puts their hands on it, probably is our best option. But thank you for sharing, Judy. That's really interesting. And what a great meeting. It sounds like you had a great meeting. So that's you can build on that. So that's
I would
awesome.
just ask whether we could get to the point where Senator Coons himself would bring on a colleague on the other side of the aisle, like give him a little job. Not that we wouldn't do anything, but.
Well, we did
could he
discuss
carry?
that. We did discuss that. And again, I think the legislative aide's attitude was sort of, it won't happen, which is most unfortunate. But I agree with you that it's worth making the effort again.
Well, and Senator Coons could even, show him a different, show the, what somebody on the other side, a different amendment proposal. You just ask for their opinion of what is it you don't like about this? Is there a way you think we could come together? So that's a possibility too. But have you ever met with Senator Coons himself?
No, we have not. We did meet
yeah.
with we met with Senator Carper the last time he actually ran, which was in 2018. And that was the worst interaction I ever had in my life. But so, I mean, it was he wouldn't let us say a single sentence without interruption. And it was always completely off topic. It was just very frustrating. We tried all your tactics, Sam.
Just brush it off. He's gone. So yeah. So maybe, that's working to get a meeting with Senator Coons himself. That's be an opportunity to bring up possibly, can you just get somebody's opinion, since he does like to work across the aisle, and, when he can acknowledge, look, I know these are all Democrats on this, but this is something that's got cross-partisan support. Is there something here that you could work with or would change? So, but that's awesome. Yeah.
And stick around, because we have a lot of other tactics to be used to move electeds along, and have been going over them with the others. So I'm going to share my screen so we can start to talk about the champion scale.
Perfect.
All right. So let's review this champion scale now, just as a point of reference for our discussion. And we obviously started out here with opposed, which of course doesn't make us happy. And then we would move an elected up to neutral, and then supporter, which is basically where a co-sponsor is. They're a supporter. They're not more than a supporter. They're just a supporter. And then an advocate, and then a leader, and then a champion. So what I'm going to do, we're going to read through these, and if I can have people read a screen at a time. Joan, would you read this one for us? You can unmute. There you go.
Opposed. I think we can agree that the farther you can get from being a champion on our issue is being opposed. I can't see the whole screen.
Oh, okay.
There we go. From being a champion on our issue is being opposed. A member of Congress or other elected officials who are opposed might say, quote, I don't support that, unquote, or quote, my constituents wouldn't support that, unquote, or what you're talking about isn't even a problem, or I agree that it is a problem, but I can't support your solution.
And Judy, would you read the next screen? The next one. Oops, sorry. There we go.
Neutral or uninformed. The next level up from opposed is neutral or uninformed. Someone who's neutral might say, I need more information, or can you explain it to me more fully? Or could you give me materials to read so I can make a more informed decision?
Great. And Sam, would you like to read our next one?
I would love to. Supporter. The next level up from neutral is supporter. A supporter might say, I'll co-sponsor that, or I think that's a good solution and I can get behind it. advocate. The next level up from supporter is advocate. An advocate might say, now that I'm a co-sponsor, I think it's important to build support for this, or I'm going to talk to others in Congress about supporting it, or could you help me draft an op-ed for our paper so we can educate my constituents?
Great. Good. All right, and then I'll read the next. Leader and spokesperson. Next level up from advocate is a leader and spokesperson. A leader and spokesperson might be the lead sponsor on a bill or the initiator of a sign-on letter or a caucus on our issue. So in our, probably in our world, the people who are the leader and spokesperson would be Jamie Raskin, Jim McGovern, John Katko, Ted Deutsch, I think might, and even Jamie Raskin could sometimes between maybe a champion and a leader and spokesperson, but I think that they pretty much reside in the leader and spokesperson place. A champion is the final level. Sam says, I don't like it when groups cheapen the term champion and call anyone who does anything good a champion. A champion is someone, who is so passionate that they're out in front of American Promise and pushing us to catch up. They might say, I've arranged for 5 of my Democratic colleagues and 5 of my Republican colleagues to host town hall meetings on overturning Citizens United, and I need your help finding speakers for some of those 10 cities. And I don't think we're really seeing that too often. So I'm going to stop the share here. So I think the key thing is that we have a lot. We had 220 co-sponsors. Now we know that there's some issues in terms of we need to get more bipartisanship. We might need different language to get that bipartisanship. But of those 220 co-sponsors, there aren't very many that were doing some of these other things, because we were looking at them, I think, as a group. A lot of us were looking at them and saying, well, they're a supporter, they're a co-sponsor, I don't have to do anything else. No, they are a prime opportunity for us to activate them, do more to educate their own constituents and to bring on other colleagues to up their game, to move up the champion scale. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So we're going to try to see what can we do to move our supporter up the champion scale to an advocate. And they might, Sam likes to point out, they might not really stay an advocate. They might do 1 or 2 things and then they might slide back to a supporter and not do too much. And then we might need to push them a little bit more and get them to move up the champion scale back to an advocate and kind of keep working them, to push them up the hill. So Vicki, you want to do the recap on the goals?
Well, yeah, so a recap on short-term goals is to get direct meeting with the elected in order to build a relationship. Like we were talking, Judy, early on, she had a great meeting with the aide. She didn't get the answer she was hoping she would get, but we really want to try and get a meeting with the member of Congress in person, in Zoom, whatever, so that we can actually hear from their mouth how they feel about it and get that feedback, so we know what kind of tactics we have to use in the future. But so that's the short-term goal, always to get a direct meeting with the elected in order to build a relationship. The longer-term goal is to get the elected official to take additional advocacy actions to increase support in the public and with colleagues in Congress, like moving the elected up the champion scale. So that's the long-term goal. And, like Marie said, I don't think we've seen any true champions yet, except for those several. And we'd like to see a whole bunch more by the time the next election comes. So we have some work to do.
Right. So what we would like to do is to get a volunteer, and Judy did this a little bit, but if somebody has a little bit more, we want you to share your experience with an elected who's a supporter, co-sponsor, so that we can brainstorm on next steps of what to do with them. We'd like the volunteer to have some history of interactions with the elected. Preferably you were in recent lobby day meeting with the staff of the elected or with the elected, and have some details of what steps your group has previously taken with this elected in terms of how many media pieces have you had published, what number of prior meetings have you had. You don't have to disclose the name of the elected if you prefer not to, but Please note, like, if you're new to lobbying and you haven't done this before, you're just starting a relationship with an elected who has decided to co-sponsor, these are definitely tactics that you're going to want to learn in order to have them in your toolbox. But we'd like to hear from somebody who's had some of these different interactions, so we can say, all right, you've tried this, now let's pivot and try that. So do we have anybody who wants to volunteer? And just can stick up your hand and unmute yourself. Well, Judy, can I ask you, because I know you have had some relations with these various electeds for a couple of years now. How about Lisa Rochester?
Blunt
Yeah.
Rochester.
Yeah, Blunt Rochester. You guys have met with her for a couple times now, right?
We haven't met directly with her, but we have met with her staff, and
Yeah.
both times we met, each of those times we used the opportunity to ask to make sure that she actually was listed as a co-sponsor on in the House, and that gave us opportunity because it didn't show up for a while. If, as you know, if
Yeah.
once you sign on to something, sometimes it
When-
takes.
So when was the first outreach that you had to her staff to look for any kind of a meeting?
It was either 2018 or 19.
Okay.
And then we reached out, you know, via the web with 20 in 1920. I mean 2020, sorry.
Okay.
And yeah, both times we were able to encourage the staff, and we had several interactions with the staff because we weren't seeing her name pop up. And so it was a sort of an ongoing thing both years. And eventually her name did appear. But again, that was just a chance for us to indicate that we're paying attention and following up.
So had you, at the last meeting with the staffer, did you, what was your ask other than having the co-sponsorship show up? Did you ask for a meeting directly with her, with the Congresswoman, or, ask for an op-ed or anything of that nature?
No, we didn't. We just, no, and this would be a good time actually to go back and start working on that. I have to tell you, the first time I met Lisa Blunt Rochester was at a reception shortly after she was first elected.
Mhm.
She said, it was really funny. I just said, I'm really concerned about the impact of money in politics, the big money. And she looked at me, she said, oh, it's terrible. She said, if my husband hadn't left me a lot of money, I couldn't be here. That was a really funny comment.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Very
And then-
forthright.
How about like letters to the, have there been any letters to the editor that your group has had published that have specifically mentioned her, or that she is a co-sponsor?
I think that we have thanked all of our U.S. congressional delegation.
Good.
At some point, we've had many letters and a few op-eds. Sorry.
Good.
I'm not gonna be able to get that. I'm gonna.
All right. So I guess since if you had asked for, if you were asking for a direct meeting, then that might be something, that would definitely be something, in terms of additional asks, asking for a direct meeting with her, and asking for some of these other things that we're going to go over. But what do you think, like hearing some of these things that we've mentioned, like what do you think you can do maybe to move, just to start to make some inroads to move her up the champion scale?
Well, I will say that both with Coons and with Lisa Blunt Rochester, we did ask if there was any chance that they might be able to bring along any of their Republican colleagues, because both of these are considered moderate Democrats. They're not,
Mhm.
left-winger, progressive, ultra progressive types. And we just didn't get very far. We made the ask, but
Okay, so what other, do you have anybody else have any other ideas of what maybe the group in Delaware can do to work with the Congresswoman? Ishwari, are you signaling yes, you have an idea?
Yeah, just a question. I mean, have you asked her to write an op-ed in support? Because that's kind of like one of the asks from the recent lobby day. So, you know, that's the kind of, that might be something, if you could prepare an op-ed. I mean, that's what we're doing right now with our Senator Heinrich. We've prepared an op-ed for him. We're hearing absolutely nothing back from our attempt to reach his office. I'm
We're gonna
still
go
trying.
over some, we're gonna go over some pointers about maybe how you can hear back from his office.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I kind of liked the idea that I think you mentioned, Marie and Vicky, in the something leading up to this meeting about using Constitution Day right now is a really good sort of suggestion in terms of timing. You know, could you get your op-ed in as a celebration of Constitution Day? So that's kind of what I'm going to try to do. And we did meet with a very interesting staff member on lobby days in Heinrich's office, but he's not really good at getting back to us. So right now, rather than just sending the op-ed to him, I'm trying to get contact information from some of the communications
I'm going to
people.
preempt you, Ishwari, because that's actually part of what we're going to cover a little bit later in the meeting. So,
all right.
Okay. Anybody else for anything specific for Judy in terms of their ideas of what you could do with a congressperson that you're trying to, you're trying to make contact with and trying to move along? Well, why don't we go to our tactics? We have some tactics to review with you. I'm going to share my screen again here. Ooh, what happened here? Sorry, escape. Sorry, guys. Click to exit. Let me try this one more time to launch this. There we go. That should work. So we're seeing the champion scale there, and then let's flip to this. All right. So Vicky,
Yes.
I'll turn it over to you.
So a letter to the editor is a good tactic. Thanking the elected for co-sponsoring the amendment proposal. Thanks to Congressperson Jones for being a co-sponsor. I look forward to their leadership in building support. That's an opportunity to share information about, what you're doing in the state as well, in their district, how the support is there and what kind of work you're doing, any kind of local resolutions passed, that kind of thing. And then send the published letter to editor to the aide. In 2 to 3 days, call the aide and check to make sure that it was seen. That way, you've followed up and somebody's actually looked at it, or if not, then take note to go look for it. And then make sure you share it on social media and tag the elected official to get their attention, especially Twitter. That seems to really, really get them. They're looking at Twitter all the time, at least their aides are. And then collect letters, postcards, citizen pledges, constituent comments, and deliver it to the elected's office. Especially if you're, in district, that's a lot easier, and that somebody's received it, you've handed it over to them. And then arrange for endorsements by community leaders, by letter to editor, op-ed, a letter to the elected, or a joint meeting with the elected. Who do they know or work with? Who are they affiliated with in the committee? Other community leaders, and see if you can help get them on board with you to bring the elected further on the champion scale.
So these three are basically all things that can be used with that congressperson who's not answering your calls, then the next call, you send an email with this letter to the editor. It said, we put a letter to the editor and then thanked Congressperson, and we're really looking for some leadership and helping to educate the public, because this is really important. And I know the Congressperson thinks that because the Congressperson is co-sponsoring and follow up and nudge them to say, hey, there's support in the community. Here's letters, here's postcards, here's citizen pledges from the district that people support this. And the same with the endorsement, same thing. So the next, sorry, let me go back here. The next, I guess I'm going to have to stop the share. No, whatever. So excuse me, I'm sorry, the numbers are all messed up here, but the actions to complete the asks that you made, and this should be 4, 5, and 6, obviously. Sorry, go ahead, Vicki.
Ask for a collaboration on an op-ed. I mean, you could expect to be doing most of the work in the drafting of the op-ed, and then you submit it to the comm staff. They've got a lot to do, and they're not going to take the time to do the work for you. So you need to do the work for them. And if the legislative assistant or the staff agrees to collaborate on an op-ed, make sure that they give the contact info for the communication staff member. That was one thing when we met with during lobby day, we went with staff of the members of Congress. Is in the follow-up, we always got the name of the comms director that they were going to refer us to. So that's, make sure you've got that. Submit the draft to the comm staff and check for appropriate time to expect feedback on the draft. Hey, here's something for you to look at, to review. Please let me know, how long you're going to need before I need to call and remind you, kind of thing. And then ask the comm staff whether they'll pitch the op-ed to the newspapers, and if not, you'll need to do so. And that's kind of, what in Minnesota here, we're working with senators. We'd like to have them choose a newspaper in an area of the state where we don't have as many volunteers. So that's something they can be very helpful with to help you spread the word across the state. And then ask for participation in your American Promise chapter event. Sometimes they'll just, well, actually now everything's on Zoom, but yeah, they can pop in. It's a lot easier for them to pop in now than it used to be. Give a tentative idea of what event you propose to the staff, a panel discussion, town hall discussion, what audience you expect to draw. How many people are going to be there is something they're really going to want to know, and how you're marketing it. You can have a rough idea of timing to propose or ask the best timing for the elected. Try to get 6 to 8 weeks time frame for prep, and try to target for an in-district work period or recess for best chance of the elected being available. And so like right now they're in recess, you want to ask for the next time they're going to be in district. So that's going to be December. And then use press releases before the event, invite the press to the event, pitch the story after the event, and the letter to the editors thanking the elected after the event to boost the effectiveness. And when you're writing letters to the editor, make sure you have somebody lined up to respond to your letter to the editor with their own letter to the editor. I read with great interest that yada, yada, yada. So you can kind of keep it going. And then plus the editor gets an idea of what kind of support there is out there for it. And then you could also ask the elected to sign a letter to the entire congressional delegation of the state, or state caucus members, to sign on as co-sponsors to the resolution. This is a concrete action that we can see. So that's pretty cool. Just to ask them to write a letter to the other 7 members of Congress in the state, or however many you have, and ask them to support as well.
Great.
So we've created a document info hub for Constitution Day plan with links to the info we just shared on the champion scale, including the tactics for opposed and neutral, as well as resources for the coordinated plan that Marie and I are proposing tonight. Marnie's putting that link in the chat right now.
And it will be in the, it'll be in a follow-up email as well.
Good.
So since we're 3 months status post lobby day meetings, and our Getting Elected Officials team is covering these moving supporters to advocates, we thought that this would be a perfect time to focus on op-eds particularly, but even letters to the editor about Constitution Day, and how it's the perfect time to think about amending the Constitution to address this big problem of money in politics. And in addition, it's a great way to move our electeds up the champion scale. In addition, so many of us probably asked for collaboration on op-eds at our meetings. And in addition, many of us probably asked for direct meetings with the electeds as an ask at our lobby day meetings. So let me talk about that for a moment as well. We would like to try to work on for the direct meetings, if maybe people think about focusing on trying to get that direct meeting by maybe November or even December when they're back in district. And some of these things that we're going to be doing in the meantime are things that would help to work on getting that getting that direct meeting as well. So I just wanted to ask by a show of hands, or you can use the reaction button in the lower right, how many have been successful in having a follow-up meeting with the staff or a direct meeting with the elected since your lobby day? Anybody? So we had the one with Andy Kim, and I've had some phone calls, but I haven't had meetings with any of the other staffers. So we definitely have room for upping our game here. So that's good. And those first 3 tactics on that first slide about nudging them along, those are great things to use to work on, hey, let's get a meeting to talk about this and move things along. So for the second part of the plan, for the op-ed, we think Constitution's Day is a great what we call a news hook for an op-ed. It's a current event or an anniversary that pertains to what it is that you want to highlight in your op-ed. And so Constitution Day is a natural for us, right? And last year during COVID, several of us tried to work on getting op-eds and letters to the editor about Constitution Day done. And Ashwari, I think, was pretty much our person who kept track in a spreadsheet, if I'm not mistaken. And we got a decent number. Ashwari, do you remember what the final number was between letters to the editor and op-eds?
It was 20 something or maybe 30.
Okay, good. We can go back and we can check that.
Published.
We weren't focusing so much on electeds last year. We were focusing on like community leaders and getting our own published. But this is an opportunity. We have a yardstick against which to measure how we do this year, and we can focus in on electeds too. So part of our plan is I'm going to review tonight the main sections of an op-ed so we can start to think about it and maybe start to jot down some notes and drafts. And we're going to share a resource file from the op-ed project, which is a fantastic program to train people on how to write op-eds, but they have free resources on their website. So we'll give you the resource to that. Second of all, we're going to hold a sort of a work session next week on Wednesday night for 45 minutes, starting at 8 o'clock Eastern, to sort of touch bases and say, just as a brainstorming session, hey, this is what I'm thinking of. What do you think? Or, I can't get anywhere. What are you doing? Just a working session. So anybody who wants to just drop in and work on it, come on by, and that's what we're going to do. And then at the Letter to the Editor team meeting on Thursday, August 26th, which is the monthly meeting that happens. So far, we've focused on letters to the editor, and certainly someone who feels that there's way out of their ballpark to work on an op-ed, then fine, a letter to the editor is great. But we're going to focus on op-eds on that meeting too, a little bit more on the structure of one. And then we're going to, with Sam's help, we're going to work on the idea of how do you pitch an op-ed, how do you choose where to try to contact the editor, and what's that whole process about? Because we are probably going to want to try to get a draft together by the end of the month to have enough time to get it maybe published the week of the 17th, if we need some feedback from the staffer and sort of their approval, and then if we have to go back and forth with the op-ed paper, the editor who handles op-eds. Or it may be the staff or the comms person might say, oh no, I'll pitch this, fine. And then you're not going to be doing that part of it, but still they need some time to do that. So let me go back and share my screen for a moment, and I'm going to show you the main parts of the, I'm sorry, the main parts of the op-ed. Sorry, I'm having trouble with this slide thing.
Marie and I are both working remotely. So she's
Yeah.
South Carolina and I'm at an RV park in Minnesota. So we're a little challenged.
But it's working, it's working. There we go. All right. So, format for an op-ed. It's not just a glorified letter to the editor. It's between 600 and 700 words. Mostly you can Google what the submission criteria are for the papers that you would like to focus on. But the parts of it are the lead. So that's a catchy opening because you want somebody to read your 600 or 700 words. So you want to catch their attention. It's said that you have like 10 to 15 seconds to catch someone's attention. So you need to have sort of a snazzy line or two to catch the get them hooked, get them reading. And then news hook. So it's a link to a timely anniversary or a current event that has something to do with your argument. And for us, it's going to be Constitution Day. That's what we know we're going to focus on. Argument is your main point. And, our argument is that it's time to amend the Constitution to limit big money in politics. So we're going to, do some version of that. And then evidence, cite 2 or 3 supporting facts. Now here, you could choose to do one of a couple things. You could choose to go to the historical facts about amending the Constitution, that there were 12 constitutional amendments in the 20th century, and we haven't had one in a while, and it's about time, and that it's the American citizens' right to correct the Constitution when government's not meeting the needs of the people. It's been done 27 times so far. We could go to any of the facts about money in politics. You could choose to go a couple different ways with this. And then there's a section to be sure. So to make it more credible, if you take a very common counter argument to the position, like maybe money is speech, and say, no, money is power. Anne likes to use that particular point in her presentations. It's very powerful. No, money's not speech. Money is power. Money is the power to flood out everyone else from the airwaves. So the message of the candidates doesn't come through, and the majority of Americans and their positions on policy are not enacted. That's an example. And then a conclusion. So you want to return to your main point that it's time for us to be serious about winning this constitutional amendment to fix our democracy, or to bring self-government, or however you want to phrase it. And so those are the main points. And this is in the document. First of all, it's in the op-ed project link, which I said is in that info hub. And Marnie already shared it in there, I believe. And we'll be going over, more of that. But if you go into that op-ed project link that's in that info hub, they go into quite a bit more detail and do some examples. So that's good. And now I'm going to give you a message from Sam. And then Vicki is going to give you some examples from excerpts from the letters to the editor and the op-eds that were published last year for maybe some wording or some ideas, and certainly the facts you can use. The others you need to put in your own, if you want to kind of put in your own words, you could do that. But Sam's message is that the most important suggestion is, if we're going to be pitching the op-eds on our own, that developing the relationship with an op-ed editor or whomever it is that selects op-eds for the paper in our area, if we have a conversation with him or her and they don't publish the op-ed, that's step 1 on the road to developing a relationship in which they get to know and trust us, and quite honestly grow to be inspired by our commitment and our persistence. Eventually, it gets to the point where they read the op-ed that we submit with special care and with an extra interest in publishing it if they think it's good. That's what the editorial page editor at the South Florida Sun Sentinel did with Sam's op-eds until she retired in April. Darn. So time to build a new relationship. But it comes back to this building relationship, this idea of building relationships and the importance of building relationships. So Vicki, I turn it over to you. You're on mute.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen here. Share. Okay, so these were pieces of op-eds and letters to the editor that we've accumulated from last year. So I wouldn't, I did have copy and paste the way you want to, but for a letter to the editor op-ed with an elected official, you want to make sure that you're not plagiarizing anything. So you'll probably want to mix it up a little bit. But we've got some specific here at the top, and it's going to be on that info hub. Some specific to Constitution Day that gives you the historical facts, and it's up to date. It is 234 years ago. So that we have that kind of information there. We have how to approach it from a faith standpoint. If the issue from a faith standpoint, not necessarily related to the historical Constitution Day. And then what an amendment would do for us, how passing an amendment is going to benefit us. Remember, the Constitution says that we're going to form a more perfect union. So these are ways that we can form a more perfect union. So I would just encourage you to look through it and get some ideas from it. It's got historically, what major, amendments have done for us as a society. And you've got all that information there, so you don't have to research and reinvent the wheel. But again, kind of mix it up a little bit on, use your own voice. And if you're collaborating with a member of Congress, you want to make sure that it's something that's that they're going to be comfortable with. See, look here, it should be states. So correct any issues you see, but these are just some tips for you. And it's perfect because a lot of times if you want to collaborate with your elected official, you're not going to want to talk about gun violence or some issue that's going to cause controversy. This is a non-controversial issue. Having an anniversary, a date in history that you can use to bring up the amendment is really it's a really great opportunity. And everybody should be able to be comfortable with it because it's not going to be offending anybody. So any questions on this?
A question.
I do have a question.
Okay.
How about we go with Joan and then Judy?
What's a recommended number of words?
500
So Joan,
to 700.
Yeah. And you want to look at your paper and Google submission criteria for op-ed, and they'll tell you, because sometimes it'll be 500 and sometimes it'll be 750 or more or less. So you just have to go with what they're what they allow. But the tighter it can be, and that we'll go over some of these details, and they are a little bit in the op-ed project too. The tighter it can be, like, don't be verbose, speak plainly. Don't use jargon, speak plainly, because you want to talk to the readership of the paper, that the piece is going to be published in.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, a lot of times you have excess words, your county words. Like, if you were going to make a statement, you want to follow it up with, in fact, this. You don't have to say in fact. You can just throw another fact out there. So, just you learn how to be a little more concise in your verbiage, which I'm horrible at editing myself. So it's a challenge for most of us, I think.
If people write drafts, then next week we can use that as a brainstorming to say, well, okay, how could this be a little more assertive rather than passive voice, but active voice, those types of things. So
yeah, and actually, Grammarly is a program that does that for you too. So that's if you've never used that before, you could download that. Who else had a question?
Judy.
Judy.
I just was wondering if anybody else has faced what we're facing with here, what we're faced with. We had, for a long time, for the first several years we were involved with this, we had a very friendly editor in the largest newspaper in Delaware, which is the News Journal. And he published virtually every single thing we put in. So we had a lot of coverage. And then it was bought out by Gannett, and we haven't been able to get a single thing into that paper. We've tried many, many times. It's just, this is a topic. Now we have a extremely active Indivisible group here with some high-powered folks in it, and they get a lot of things published, but we cannot get anything on this topic published. So we've now,
see if,
go ahead.
I was going to say, see if you could meet somebody on the editorial staff for coffee.
Yeah, I'll give that a try. I must say, it never even entered my mind.
I did that. Yeah, and they'll meet you. Usually they'll meet you. I think Sam must have recommended that to me. I wouldn't have come up by that by my own.
Right. And the other thing is, I'd ask Indivisible what their relationship is, or who their best go-to person is, or whatever, in addition to getting my own relationship.
Right. Both, thank you. Good ideas, both of these. I say it didn't really dawn on me. I used to have a sort of a friendly relationship with the guy before, because he was totally on board with this. But what I will say, that the sort of silver lining to that cloud is that we now publish in a downstate paper, which is a much more conservative area. And we sort of feel like we need to be making more inroads anyway down in that part of the state. So anyway.
But there's no reason why you couldn't have, if two people were interested, write something to try to get into Gannett, and then something to go into the downstate paper.
Right. That would be my preference. True.
Yeah, sure. Who else has a question or feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't do this? Anybody feeling that way?
They're all on board. Woo-hoo!
Good. That's good.
You can do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you know what? Maybe you can't, maybe you feel like you're local, but we have trouble with the Gannett papers in our immediate area as well. But some of the other papers that are in Jersey, we have a little more success with. And there are some newer online, they're smaller, but hey, it's something in the public sphere, getting the information out there. Maybe that won't be the one that you do. Maybe that'll be one that, you do on your own, not one that you have the elected involved with. But the other thing too is that the comms director, especially if they've agreed to collaborate on it, the one that I had done with my congressman 2 years ago now was they were the ones who worked the editors, and it wasn't linked to Constitution Day. It was about voting. So they worked. I think there were 3 different papers before the third paper. The editor said, "Yep, we'll put it in." So
another opportunity is the business section. I mean, money in politics is completely related to corporations. So if you have somebody who's in the business world, and the business editor might be willing to have that in their section. Certainly it's a business decision, whether or not they're going to participate in this. So if that'd be a great tactic if you have the right contacts to try and get in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What other questions do people have? Anybody?
Yeah. Anybody? All right, well, let's hold ourselves accountable and commit to these 2 tactics of letter to editors or collaborative op-eds for Constitution Day, and direct meetings with our elected by November to move our electeds up the champion scale from wherever they are now on the scale. Please take a minute and name that tactic that you will focus on this month. And note 2 tasks to begin to focus on for the Constitution Day op-ed are to get started on a draft and contacting the elected's office about agreeing to collaboration. So those two things, we've given you the tools with the talking points, and the op-ed source is a really good one. And hopefully, don't be intimidated. It's a great exercise for everybody. So yeah, if you could just commit to let's see, you're going to focus on this, and put that in the chat. Name the tactic that you'll focus on this month.
Bev, do you have a question? Beverly, you're on mute if you're trying to ask a question.
Yes, I
Yeah.
apologize. I came in late. I had to. Where can I find all the information or a recording of this talk?
Well, the recording will be sent out afterwards. We can put, there's a information doc that we put together. Can you throw that one in there again, Marnie?
Marnie, yeah.
Is it this? I think it must be this one. The other one's used after the sign-in sheet. I think it must be this one. From 8/12.
Okay,
Yep,
so
and it has the op-ed
Just-
project link and the link of the tactics to take with your moving your elected up the champion scale, and the links to register to the draft working draft section next Wednesday, as well as the letter to the editor team on Thursday, the 26th. Anybody else with any questions? Or
Thank you.
all right, great. Marnie, did you want to close us out?
Yes, I will. So thank you all for coming. So in closing, I want to make sure that everyone filled out the attendance sheet in the chat. I'm going to put it in again right now. Let me know if you got that. So the other monthly advocacy team calls include using social media to advance the 28th Amendment, which meets on the first Thursday of the month. 2, organizing events, which meets on the first Tuesday of each month. 3, friend banking, which meets on the third Thursday of each month. And 4, writing letters to the editor that get published, which meets on the fourth Thursday of each month. I want to make it clear that we're not just talking about a one-time training and then wish you luck. No, the American Promise Empowerment Way is to provide you with trainings and then offer ongoing support from a team of folks who will meet monthly, led by trained volunteers. So thank you all so much for coming. These advocacy and ongoing teams are a good way for chapters to get existing members into action, and a great way to help new American Promise members to get training in these tactics so new people can be more effective when working with their chapter on getting their state ready to ratify. We encourage you to commit to attend the meetings of the advocacy teams that you choose for the next 4 months. I'm sharing the Google commitment form in the chat. You can also register for these events on the American Promise website via the calendar of upcoming events. So I want to point out that these skills are useful, not just in our advocacy, but for any advocacy group, regardless of the issue. These are skills that can help further any reform you're involved with. Thanks for all of you for joining us tonight. Tell your chapter members and other leaders what you have learned and invite them to join us next month. Our next Getting Elected Officials to Act team meeting is Thursday, September 9th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll follow up in September meeting of our progress. So thank you all. Have a great night.
thanks. Night, everybody.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.